Have you recently been hearing about an upcoming recession and what it could do to the everyday worker? Are you worried that the market could crash like it did in 2008 or even be worse? In this video, we will be shining some light on the upcoming recession. Despite this, most economic metrics are looking good. Growth is strong and unemployment is low. However, asset markets are hovering around all-time highs. Is this all just getting further pushed down the road? Before the video begins, make sure to like and subscribe for more informational content like this. I reckon most of you know already, but the forces of supply and demand, how much is supplied and demanded, determine what prices are. These set the level at which more or less is supplied and demanded. With a perfectly balanced supply and demand rate, the market is happy. If too many things are available or not enough, the price will fall. If there aren't enough or too many things are bought, then the price rises. It's interesting to see how this works on a broader scale. Economists use these principles across entire countries, too. They look at things like the total supply and demand of goods, and the effect on prices from all consumers. By comparing this to demand or supply, the consensus is that there are two ways to achieve economic growth, either increasing demand or increasing the supply. But when it comes to long-term and stable prosperity, both need to be bolstered simultaneously. Here's how a country might invent some new manufacturing methods that would make building products easier. This would increase the country's production and provide more goods for sale. Increased supply without increased demand means prices go down. It would mean more goods and services are consumed or with lower prices. But deflation, as this is known, isn't sustainable long term. We explored some of the issues of deflation in depth last month in our video on Japan. One consequence of falling prices is that people don't want to buy it because they've got no stick prodding them to do it. On the other hand, companies might be more inclined to invest since wages are lower, but employees might not be too eager if rates are low and their investment has a higher risk. In an infinite growth economy, it is theoretically possible for there to be a sudden increase in demand without a corresponding increase in supply. This will cause inflation. In contrast to the situation pictured in our scenario, China's Satan economy has policies of redistribution and encourages long-term sustainable practices such as moderation with consumption and recycling. That means spending power is growing and people can afford more. That boosts demand, but if supply doesn't match it, things will get competitive for goods and services. This competition is often about paying more money. As an economy's price level of goods and services is increasing, that's called inflation. Obviously, this can cause some serious harm as well. So the trick is to make sure that the economy grows by increasing demand and supply evenly. There are various ways of growing supply, but it's important not to forget about demand. These people work at a factory, do research, or are providing financial services to the aggregate market. It is hard for governments to increase the supply of goods because they are not usually a major supplier of goods in the first place, so they have limited power to make changes. One reason it is so difficult is that, in most major economies, the government doesn't work directly with sellers/products anyway. Higher the demand in a market, the more you need to invest in the production of the product and reach out to new customers. The more we make, the easier it gets. If we cut taxes and increased welfare in times of need or give people money directly instead of a complicated welfare system, it's always an option to save money, and that might be tricky to tackle because they could just keep their cash with them, but then again they would have no money later on. This is why consumer confidence is talked about so much in the news. When more people have money and more people are able to spend, it creates a whole new market for businesses. Which is why we see so many businesses grow their investments into new markets when we see a booming economy. It's hard for governments to intervene in supply and relatively easy for them to influence demand. But why does this mean we need recessions? Well, economic downturns come in two types. And there's a good chance that you've probably guessed what these are: demand-based recessions. Business cycles are cyclical because they're pretty much sustained by people who work, so when the economy is good, companies can do well too. Employees' jobs enable them to take out loans, which enable them to buy more and spend money on products being sold. When the economy does well, that also means that these businesses are able to keep doing better and provide more jobs. This is what's referred to as the debt cycle, where this debt needs to be paid back. If they were making $100K after tax, they could make it rain with $100K, but at some point they might want to buy a new whip or a boat. They might have enough money to do so. They have two options to make it possible. One way to do this is to not spend any money for a few years until you can save up enough cash. To economists, this person's consumption may be lower than their household income for a few years and then spike in the year that they finally end. Of course, no one saves for anything anymore. These days, we just take out a loan. The same thing happens in reverse for the debtor when they start paying back the money with large portions of their paycheck going straight to the bank. Economists will see an immediate spike in consumption followed by a drop in spending on other things. As they pay back this loan in aggregate, household spending changes, and this feeds back on other people, too. If a few people start tightening their belts to pay their debts, then company revenues will fall and these businesses will struggle. Once jobs being lost and people stop taking out loans to spend, they stop buying things. When businesses are losing customers, they will start laying off workers. Add the fact that people would feel really hesitant to take on new debt when everybody they know is getting laid off, and you can see how this can get out of hand. Governments can help in this situation by injecting money into the system to match falling household incomes and consumer confidence. Countercyclical monetary and fiscal policy has been used for decades now to prevent the debt cycle from worsening. You can't get rid of these busts, but you can make them less extreme by using this method. It increases the potential for recessions by a small degree. Well, not exactly. The term supply shock originated in the 1970s to describe the oil crisis. Nowadays, it typically refers to a sudden and temporary reduction in supply of an otherwise stable commodity as a result of political or natural calamities, such as wars or natural disasters. Some of the issues that can negatively impact an economy are physical damage to production capabilities, natural disasters, trade wars, and even stuff like global pandemics. Supply shortages are a really big problem. With a shortage of supply and increased demand, it's much harder for an economy to grow. Governments can't really do anything with that, even if they go through with privatizing certain areas of the country. It's just not stuff they're usually responsible for. 'Cause they're not gonna do good deals and make a profit if the global economy is slow. Economies go through rough patches, and everyone from politicians to business owners should be open about this. It's a bit of a balancing act, but trying to avoid downturns can lead to worse things happening. There's so much demand with high inflation levels, but we can't sustain the supply. If a business is doing really well and there's lots of money flowing around, it'll be easier for them to attract investors looking for good prospects. Investors are more likely to invest their funds in this kind of company, which then increases the amount of investment taking place. Investors buying into the belief that the growth is going to last forever will make any business appear good, which means you are investing in them. This will result in bad businesses paying off and asset markets with unrealistically high valuations. Investors are key to the economy, and without them, capital can't be put to good use. If investors start relying on government stimulus rather than their own judgment, there's no point in having them around. Seriously. Whenever an economic crisis hits, crappy companies have a tendency to fall to the wayside and allow for better ones with better products, management, and business strategies to rise. That's about all that needs explaining their economic downturns can be good for the country. As Darwin observed, the environment is instrumental in natural selection. Adversity begets evolution. Financial hardship or a jumbled predator may destroy the animal's health and well-being. Pain is an inevitable and important part of life. The point of painkillers is to stop the most serious kind from happening, but there's no shame in giving them out to prevent the worst. Using too many or for too long, however, can be a serious problem that needs to be addressed. Essentially, you're going to end up with some painful side effects with no guarantee that this is going to solve the underlying issues that are causing the problems in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more informational content. Thank you all, and remember, stay informed, stay prepared.